Hi, it's Monwara Ali, and I'm back with another conversation on community leadership. And today I have a lovely guest called Fontana, who does a lot of community development work in Waltham Forest. And I'm excited to see what we're going to talk about. Another inspiring conversation. Join us. Please do comment. Let us know where you are listening from. And this is also going to be on my YouTube channel. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're watching from the YouTube channel, please do comment, give us some feedback, and feel free to ask questions. I'm just going to invite my lovely guest in.
Arrived.
Hi, Fontana.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm excited.
Excited. Lovely to have you today. And I'm looking forward to learning lots about your work and what you do. So, Fontana Kennedy is an NVC practitioner. So, Fontana, tell us exactly what you do and what does NVC stand for?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today. NVC. So NVC is non-violent communication.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, what I do is raise awareness of needs, human needs. That's what it is. So NVC is a communication tool where we practice needs consciousness. So in the workplace, at home, on your own, at all times, wherever, with whoever, we just become aware of what our needs are in the moment. And that's what I love to coach and share and be about. Yeah.
Wow. That's really different. I mean, communication, I just have this view about communication being something that causes a lot of our problems. And that's like really valuable non-violent communication practitioner. It's very, very interesting. I'd love to learn more. So, Fontana, tell us a little bit about your your values. What is it that you actually, what is it that's important to you in terms of whether it's work or on a personal level?
Thanks. For me, it's taken me many years to discover what is important to me, and a lot of loss that's really brought it to the forefront of my awareness and what really matters. And those things are, some of them I did already know, but there's a few more that were like hiding a little deeper, right? So the ones at the forefront that I already knew, which was a part of me starting my own business back in 2014, which is courage. And my business was called Universal Courage. So courage was just like the foundation for anything and everything else, really. So it's the core value. And then over time, what I really realized, and of late, especially because of COVID and because of loss, as I said, that I really, really, really value intimacy, to be able to connect on a deeper level than we do generally as human beings, and to have really meaningful conversations that offer value to the collective, to the community, to ourselves, just by showing up and being brave and having these types of conversations. So yeah, those things really, really, really matter to me.
Oh, that's so interesting. You said that about being brave and about showing up. And you got me thinking about COVID and how isolated people felt in that situation. So it's really interesting. And then some of the work that you've been doing, it's National Inclusion Week this week. So obviously that for that reason, I'd asked you that question. You touched upon value, and people don't always feel valued. So what's your view around mental health and people that actually don't feel included?
What's my view?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you just said, I have been working with people from isolated backgrounds, and because of COVID and because of loss and stuff. So I've really been able to connect with those people on the floor, as they say. And my view is, it's why I do what I do. It's the more that we can raise awareness of our human needs, our shared human reality, which point to our human needs, the more that we can then come together, integrate more, discover our potential, discover our values, and really just see that no matter what we're going through on a mental health level, whether we're going through that on a high status level in terms of our work position, or we're going through that as a general person in society. And I don't even like that there's that distinction, right? But I want to make it because that is the perception that we have. It doesn't actually matter because the human needs are the same, though. That's the thing. You strip away the label, you strip away the paycheck, exactly the same human needs. And so I love that COVID happened for that reason, that we really got to see that. It's just shared reality. And mental health is such a big topic and big thing. But my view is that, the more aware we can be of human needs, the much more we're going to be able to take care of our mental health.
So tell me, what do you mean by human needs?
Human needs. So some of you might have come across like the whole Maslow hierarchy of needs. They're most more commonly known of. So there's like your 6 fundamental needs. So obviously your survival needs, and then they keep building and building, and then you get up to like your need for enlightenment. But the 6 core human needs are like driving everything that we do, everything that we think, and every behavior that we show up with unconsciously most of the time, or consciously. So the human needs are really what govern our lives. Without our needs met, we don't flourish, we don't grow, we don't evolve. And so most of us are really operating on a level of this pattern. And I focus a lot on patterns because history shows us that that's really a prominent thing with our species. And our pattern is that we are constantly on this circle of survival needs matter most. Survival needs matter most. Because we haven't gone back in and looked at what's going on deeper. We don't do the transformation work. We don't do the awareness work, self-awareness work. So self-awareness being one of the human needs, at the forefront of what I do anyway, it's just everything for that breakthrough that people want and yearn for and long for and cry out for when they feel so stuck in their circumstances or their whatever it is. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And obviously, if we were just going to pinpoint on one thing during the pandemic, I would say the need for food was, the thing that actually, when you strip everything away, everyone needed that. And, when we were in lockdown, our neighbors, I remember being ill, and a charity sort of CEO from another organization sent me a message and said, Munwara, if there's anything you need,
Nice.
me or the people on my road will come and drop it off. You just only need to ask, right? And it was so lovely. But then there's another bit, we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of need. I'm a big believer of a lot of things that philosophers and psychologists have tried to teach us. And many of us live in denial until we're maybe later on in our lives. But that emotional need is something that a lot of people don't understand. And then you've got, like, when you're in a leadership position and you also have an emotional need, it's almost like we're trained not to. And it's not that we don't have it, it's that we are trained not to be visible about it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be authentic if you can't at least share your emotions. And that's a very tricky balance, and probably one of the reasons, in my opinion, why people don't step up to lead, because they don't want to be like that. Because I guess society is telling us this is what you have to be like. And most of us don't want to be like that. So we don't want to step into those roles, because I think there's a big push in society now, especially with the new generation. There's a push to make change and do things differently. So where you're handed a role on a plate with a specific, particular job description, it might be that it doesn't look enticing enough. So I'm going to ask you, Fontana, what's your take on leadership? What do you see as not perfect, but good leadership?
Yeah, no, I love everything you just shared there. For me, leadership starts with self. There is no leadership if there's no self-leadership. There's no leadership from the heart if there's no self-awareness of your own personal values. Not values that you've just agreed to because that was the workplace's values and you needed the paycheck. Not that shit, but the stuff that really matters, like you was asking me. So leaders who I've connected with, like yourself, and especially in my MVC community, are people who, like you just said, they're not even the younger ones, but the younger ones are doing it. Thank God. But they're challenging the status quo. They're challenging that norm that you speak of, where we don't acknowledge we have emotional needs. And the leader of the future is, you best believe we've got emotional needs, and we're going to make it a conversation, and we're going to change the way that we set up our processes, our systems, all of that stuff, right? All of the structures where we really start honoring the fact that we're human beings and we bring back our humanity into our workplaces and our roles. And we lead from that space. And we were just having a chat before we came on live. We do champion the underdog because actually we're all just deeply suffering some level, right? Underneath all that anyway. And then maybe we put on that role because it makes us feel like, oh, we really don't have to touch, like you said, we really don't have to touch on all that stuff now because now I've got this mask and that keeps me safe from dealing with the real vulnerability that emotional needs involve.
I love the way you've actually encapsulated and summarized that. It's so important. And I see that sometimes I feel like, I guess if you're not working with people on a grassroots level, you're not working in the voluntary and community sector, it can seem like our sector is too emotional. Do you?
Yeah.
You,
That's
do
a
you
lovely judgment to have again, to keep yourself separate from being human, right?
Yeah, well, but you have a perspective on this, don't you? Like with your community, the work that you've done, do you feel like the kind of people you worked with, did you feel that it allowed you to like enable people to be okay and normal about their emotional needs?
Yeah, there's a powerful thing that happens when, like you're saying about leader again, when a leader, somebody who in a group space has appointed you to lead, right? Let's just say that for this example. There's something powerful that happens when that person just holds space for you exactly as you are. Exactly as you are.
Mm-hmm.
No expectations, no obligation, no bossing, none of this, like this really ingrained consciousness, unconsciousness that separates us as leaders to everybody else, right? There's something super transformational that happens when there are people who are vulnerable. And when I say people who are vulnerable, to me, that means people who have a lot of unmet needs.
Mm.
When you're in a position of responsibility, you used this word as well before we came on, to serve those people in some way, shape, or form. For me, I can only speak for myself at this moment. This is again why I do what I do. There's nothing more transformational for people than to know about what their unmet needs are. Just to have that awareness. There's so much after that, but just to have the awareness. So there's resources that we have to provide for that. And this is what I loved and love to do. I work in a lot of different spaces, but that's the fundamentals of it, is holding space in a completely non-judgmental way, because you know every single person in that room has the same unmet need, or it's all about needs, right? Has the same, is there as a human being who's either been through something you've been through, is going through something that you're going through, and maybe you have a perspective that they don't yet have for something that they are going through that you've already been through. And that's it. It's just connecting at the human level.
I just love this discussion and the direction it's going, because I agree with you 100% about, everybody having some need. And then I'm not going to go into the deeper level of neuroscience
Yeah, there's a lot.
and the unconscious mind, because quite often I meet people that will give the impression or will outright tell you that they don't have an unmet need of any sort and never have had, right? But actually, when you talk about self-awareness, when that individual is like that, or that kind of approach is taken, quite often the signals you're giving to the people around you in your group or the people you're managing is that they don't have a right to either. So you've instantly made that environment uncomfortable. You have not given them the safety to be open about their own needs. And this is where that's why I loved when you said about self-awareness, because if we're not aware how people are seeing us, how our behavior and body language is being interpreted by others, how can we cater for other people's needs?
Yeah. As a leader, yeah, that's crucial. Crucial.
But it might seem like, you and I are having this conversation, it might seem like the obvious thing, right? But I've been in circles where I've worked in local authorities. No, I'm not talking about Wolfen Forest. I'm talking about years ago when I was working in a couple of other boroughs in London. And, you know, somebody who worked in the community or voluntary sector was seen as too soft, or like maybe they were not intelligent enough, or they didn't understand the strategic side of things. And it did feel very much like there's a condescending attitude towards like looking down at certain sectors. But actually, like, you think about our sector and the way we work, normal human beings, when I say normal human beings, I mean your average resident will engage with us.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to engage with somebody who is wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
They're not only are they wearing a mask, they have 5 layers between them and the individual. But
Yeah.
actually working with that individual is what's paying their salary.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And we don't make it easy for ourselves. If you're in that position, as a leader, and you keep yourself separate because you haven't, like you were saying earlier, it's the denial, right? It's too painful. It's too painful to go in there and do the transformation stuff and acknowledge where, oh no, actually, yeah, 100% I've got unmet needs, and start being really, really real with yourself. Because most of us, I know you're talking about, we won't go into too much deep stuff, but you can't not touch on the obvious. Most of us were raised in families where being good, to be a good person, you have to deprive your needs. Mum, can I have a sweetie? No, that's not a good one. That's not a good need. No, hold on. I'm like, well, maybe your mum will say, let me think of one that's a really good one for everybody. This is a really good one. Mum will say, dinner time, right? And you're like, Mum, I'm full. Like, I don't want to eat anymore. And some parents, a lot of parents, I've been one of them in the past, right? Don't eat food. There's people talking out there. That's what my mum used to say to me as well, okay? It's like, so those messages that we get on a daily basis that implant us, like you said, on a neuroscience level, they stay there. That impression of, oh, if I speak my truth, I'm going to be a bad person. I'm going to be shamed for acknowledging what my needs really are. And I don't want to be a bad person, because shame feels like absolute, what's the word, alienation, yeah? Like death to the human body if you don't feel like you've got the capacity to hold that energy. So it's just a massive thing for, going back to the leaders. Like, I've led before I did the work. I was leading professionals before I started NVC consciousness. And the difference in how nourished you feel on a level where, because you know that you had unmet needs for intimacy or for, mutuality, right? And these kind of values, because you know as a leader with your self-awareness that you had those unmet needs. The difference between connecting on somebody, like you said, of all them, when you've got all them 6 masks on, shielding this and shielding anything you can, really, because you're shit scared. Your job, like holding on tight to everything because I can't lose all of this stuff, right? And the difference between living like that and serving people to going in, doing the actual work that matters to let every other external work fully flourish is untold of. There's no comparison. There's a depth, there's a appreciation of being human before anything else. Anything. That's, yeah, I just went off on my...
Yeah, no, but it's all really enlightening having this conversation with you, because we've met before and I've never really had this kind of deep level conversation, but it is all valid and it's important. And you just made me, just talking about the human side of things, made me realize, like when you gave that example about mum and the expectations to sacrifice, right? Always. I was thinking about the comments I had from a couple of friends when I started doing a bit of, social media. And one of them said, I don't like showing off. And then she said, oh, didn't mean it like that. And another friend's daughter came up to me and said, oh, Auntie, I always see you, really inspiring stuff you talk about. And it's given me the courage to do XYZ. Do you know, I find that if I listen to all the judgments out there and not listen to that self-champion in me, the one who knows, I have worked on so many levels to get to where I am today and have had to overcome so much trauma since my own childhood. And we all have trauma to deal with. You lose a family member, that's trauma. Some people will say it's not, but it's not true. We all go through bereavement. There's so many, and those, after all of those things, to be told, like, oh, you shouldn't be on social media, it's not good, as a Muslim, you're showing off, it's sinful. And I have had one or two people telling me that, and then changing the script a little bit by saying, oh, I never meant it like that. But then those are the same people who wonder why their daughters have no ambition, have little self-belief, and they don't, because they don't see role models out there.
Yep.
Because if my generation and the generation before me is too busy telling them that we only think negative of people who are visible, or women who are out there trying to be a good role model for the next generation. Because how are you ever going to think you're capable of something if you never see anyone like that?
Yes.
I'm just an anomaly, right? I am, you can call me whatever you want, really. That I didn't really have anyone that looked like me, that was ahead of me, and for me to aspire towards. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a good role model for other young Asian Muslim girls. But I don't know if this is surprising you.
Incentive, right? Like when I hear you say that's like your incentive is the fact that there was no other representative.
Yeah.
That's your like drive, like on a deeper level. Is like, oh yeah, you're aware something's missing here in the norms. Let me break those norms so that the next lot that come up can see a new norm and create a better future for our culture where, God, yeah, we can do anything, anywhere. Thank you, because my own autonomy gives me permission and my own approval to do so.
Like the way you put that.
Yeah.
And then we see organizations, and also, like, we can call it organization groups, wondering why we're offering all these freebies for young Asian Muslim girls, or just let's talk about women, right? For women to step up into leadership. Why aren't they taking it?
Are you asking me the question?
Yeah, well, I am asking you,
Yeah.
like, why is it that if all these women are given the opportunity to take on leadership roles, why are they not taking it?
Because of ancient right? This is where we have to go back into history to see where we are now, and why people like yourselves and doing what you're doing is so relevant, because of all the freaking norms that were created in times when shit was crazy. What I gotta say, right? When you really delve into the history, but where survival needs were at your forefront. And so people were literally just being like, okay, well, what's obvious? Well, men are stronger, let's go to work, kind of thing. And then women are, right? So it's like this typical, stereotypical thing. And then it just like got anchored into our consciousness. And then we just repeated, I was saying earlier, the pattern, the cycle. Every generation, then forward, until consciousness started evolving, and we started like along the timeline, especially if you do ancestral work, it's quite interesting stuff. You see that someone somewhere, you in this case, in this generation, broke the norm. Yeah, broke the cycle and broke that rubbish of, like you were saying as well before we came on, like the intelligence or the whatever the gift is that was predominantly more associated with a masculine. We switched it up and we started getting a bit more equality awareness, and then acting accordingly, and things start to change slowly. It takes a lot of time, as we can look back and see. It took a lot of time, but this is why what we're doing is so important, because we're meant to evolve. We're meant to evolve. Not meant to stay in the 1918, 1700s where those gender norms were just so limiting on people's autonomy. That's what was not valued then. The value system in those times, there was no freedom. And when I say freedom, to me, what freedom really means is your own free will. Not your conditioning, not your obligations, not all of that stuff. Your own free will on what really, really, really resonates with you, and choosing to show up with that every single day. That value, that vision, you, that aliveness, what human means to you. All of that. I've gone off on a tangent again because I forgot the question.
No, that's fine. It's all part of the conversation. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just a question and answer, but it's just, we also have, there's a human side to us, and we have opinions and perspectives, and some things we are more passionate about than others. And, there are a lot of things you've said today that I agree with 100%. And I feel like, you're talking about power when you said autonomy. And I think that's another thing that is really hard to understand, because I think the most successful, and in my opinion, the greatest of leaders are who hand over power. So do you know, or can you imagine, why do you think people don't like to hand over power?
Fear. That's a question, yeah. God, handing over power is like, that involves trust. Guess what we lost when we were children? Trust in human beings. Every time our own boundaries were violated, we lost a little bit of trust for somebody who was outside of ourselves, and in ourselves, because we didn't have a voice to speak up, right? So giving over that power again after you just got it back when you're an adult, or you think you've got it, you got more than you did when you were as a child, is the most scariest thing, because then what comes with that is, I can feel my high pitch now because this is my passion zone. What comes with that is this whole really investing in what does trust mean to you, right? So if we're going to have shared power, what does that mean and what does that look like? And first of all, do I trust myself with my own power? Which comes back to the free will, right? So sharing power with others means I'm going to trust that you are going to capitalize on my well-being, which goes back to the human needs. You're going to advocate for, if I haven't had lunch by 2 o'clock, you're going to have an awareness enough, because we're working as a team, right? So we're talking about team power, to say, have you had your lunch? Go, right? So it's like this sense of capitalizing on our own. First of all, the self-leadership. You're going to take your lunch before 2 because you're starving. That's first, no matter where, what. That need has to come first. But you're also going to be in a position where you're trusting others to look out for your best interests. Because especially if we're in a team, if we're in a community space, all of our needs matter. And all of them are going to be different needs that are alive in different moments for different people, which is why it's so important to be aware of needs, right? Because you can advocate for your own as a leader, but then also see, oh, okay, I can see that person doing that. Maybe I might want to open the window for them then, right? Because that person might not have a voice to speak up. Because they've learned, if I ask what I want, I'm going to get a no. Conditioning from the back story, right? So there's all this stuff that comes into having power, and how can we use it in a way where we flourish as individuals and as groups and as communities and as a collective human world society, right? It's all of it, but it really comes down to trust.
And trust is, how easy is it to build trust? How long does it take?
It takes long enough, from my own experience. It takes as long as it takes for you to find your voice and speak up for your needs. That's as long as it takes, because you can't trust others unless you trust yourself. That's just an illusion, right? You don't really trust others as much as fair. It's like they say in a group space, like, or in a relationship, no one can meet you further than they've met themselves, right? This is why it's just pointless to try and change people, because they can't, they won't. It's their responsibility. So trust is like, how much can I count on me to meet needs? And then it's like you said earlier, then other people are going to say, oh, she's a safe space to be around. Yes, let's appoint her as a leader. Or she's, you know, whatever it is, yeah. So it's back to needs. Trust is needs. That's all we really have at the end of the day is our needs, right? Everything is needs.
Yeah, and trust is the most important need. And so what do you think, like, in terms of, I see this a lot, like, especially in our sector, people work in silos. Sometimes there's like very little trust, and when you can often see, or you can feel at least, where somebody has very little trust in themselves or lacks confidence or whatever, low self-esteem. And often that means they also have very little trust in others. So, like, have you worked with groups, or sometimes have you worked with a particular group and felt like, oh my gosh, I'm getting nowhere with this?
Yes. Basically. Yeah. Would you like me to speak about it?
Yeah. As long as you don't get me into trouble.
No. So yeah, I have to set up for this one because it's quite recent. So basically, yeah, I have worked with elderly group of people recently, and with all of the love and my self-discovered value for patience, this is genuinely a core value that they unearthed in me. So very grateful. it's going back to what I was saying earlier. The fact and the sad reality is there was no time for the elder generation as they were growing to have conversations about what matters to them and conscious conversations about needs. Like, what? It was anywhere near the radar. Too busy trying to survive. Way too busy. So to work with the elderly, especially more than any other group, it's so clear that the cycle of consciousness is just resistance. It's just resistance to reality, because that's all they had, to be fair. It's like fighting. You had to fight for survival. You had to literally live through war, which I can't even fathom what that would have, really ingrained in you, mind, body, and spirit, and stayed there. But I can guess, because they're still human beings, right? And it's still going to come back to needs. So, yeah, it's really challenging. Because when I say consciousness, when a human has like no radar of needs consciousness on that level of a conversation, like, oh, I need this right now, and it's just complaints, and it's just like that kind of conditioning where they just have the very limited, we call it strategies in human needs, very, very limited strategies to meet their needs. And the strategies are not ones that nurture you. They're not strategies that are conducive to well-being, like complaining all the time, for example. The strategies are what needs renewing. It's not about blaming the people and all that sort of stuff, because that's just fueling the same level of limited awareness, right? It's about, what's the new strategies that we can use then? Okay, well, maybe we use our creativity. Let's do that. There's so many ways that we can develop workshops to start raising awareness. It's never too late, right? Maybe we want to have systems of consciousness and types of workshops, which we definitely do in this borough, where we are really looking at how can we create sustainable structures, yeah? And when I say sustainable structures, it's not the typical ones that we think about in terms of like your business. It's your body. Your body's your first sustainable structure. How can you create a sustainable structure with the one that matters first and foremost? And it's how can we start thinking creatively again, so we have new strategies, so that we live longer and healthier with more consciousness than we ever did.
It's really interesting, the alignment you make with the body, and and your thing, and I can hear you talk about systems needing changing. It's almost like what worked 20 years ago is not going to work now. But it's quite interesting that sometimes I've been in jobs, and I guess I've been part of initiatives where it's a new group of people, it's fresh blood, but we're using the old systems, and we're expecting innovators to work like, machines. And that's just not going to happen.
And that's what actually deprives our evolution. Denying somebody's genius, especially if they're fresh, denying them when they're challenging the status quo, pushing against that to stay on to your safety net, is literally preventing our human evolution. Because the only way we're going to create these changes in the systems and the structures that we need is by letting, like you were saying, I'm so excited about the future generation, the next generation, and those who are ready now as well, no matter what age they are, to really come forth and share your ideas and push for them. Like, I love when you say, I never take no for an answer, because it's something that you know that is fully aligned with you and your truth and what you know is going to serve the greater good. Yes. So let's hold space for every voice to be heard, every genius to be seen. And that's how the change is created.
I love how you put that, especially with the evolution. And because it can't be easy, Fontana. If we were talking to a group of young women, I'm sure they would say, like, there's so much noise externally and judgment. It's hard to decide who to listen to and who not to listen to. I had people telling me it's showing off going on social media and even might be sinful as a Muslim and all sorts of things. But then I also had women who reached out to me and said, Munwara, it's inspiring, and Munwara, I've done XYZ, I've created a LinkedIn page. A few people have told me that in the last 3 years, like I see young people that I've been in a talk or a workshop at a university, and the following day I see them with a new page on LinkedIn and they're sending me a connection request. And I feel so much joy that I made that little difference, or somehow not even, I planted a seed.
Yeah.
I won't take credit for other people's, like achievements, but I managed to plant a seed. And
Yeah.
that to me is enough. Similarly, so many people told me, why are you doing this on YouTube? What's the point? And then somebody said, a few people have said, oh, your quality is no great. You're not, you haven't got a professional team behind you and stuff. And I said, you know what? If I wait to perfect myself, I will never do it. And
Yeah.
I have always been the harshest judge of myself, right? I've never allowed other people to judge me the way I judge myself. Because of that, I wanted to change that in 2020. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop judging myself because I've got nothing to compare to. And my expectations that I have on myself are just going higher and higher. And, I'm going to get to a point where I can't go any further or whatever because my expectations are so high. I'm going to be worried about setting myself up to fail. So, it is quite tricky trying to find that balancing act. One, self-confidence is hard. Two, what role models are out there? Three, the world is telling us to be perfect. We're not all going to be like, I don't know, Simon Sinek or, Stephen Bartlett, who have their own podcast and, gathering engagement of millions of viewers on YouTube or other social media platforms. That's not going to happen. But I know one thing. There's not very many people that I see anywhere that talk about community leadership. There's not very many people who have my 30 plus years of experience of fundraising, right? There's not very many women who talk about intersectionality. I'm not just Asian and Muslim and just woman. I'm also British. I'm also Bengali. And I also speak 3 different languages. And what I find is that's my uniqueness. And we're so busy trying to fit into something that we will realize that every single one of us is so unique. There's something that makes us different than everyone else. And I'm just after that. I'm following that path where I feel like, okay, no, I'm not like others. I am doing it my way, the way I think. I'm listening to that voice inside my head I hadn't been listening to for many years.
I get very excited. No, I'm loving what you're saying right now. I'm like bursting with yesness. Because one of the things that has come to light is just literally what you're saying. But I love seeing the connections, right? So as kids, when we're not we're not heard. Like we're constantly told, like we're constantly told, that we can't. Sorry, my son's at the door.
Get your son from the door. It's fine.
Give me 1 second. I'm coming back.
It's fine. I mean, these things happen, right?
Yeah.
This is life. And by the way, for those who will be watching this on replay, or if you're watching it now, I'm not working today, so I'm doing this on my non-working day. The reason being, I actually feel I have a social responsibility to role model for other women like me. Yes, I'm in my late 40s. Yes, my children are older, and I feel like whatever way I had been conditioned, and I felt like I couldn't actually do things or pursue, be career driven, because that would be a injustice or unjust for my family or my children or my employer. I feel like I can do that now because my children are older. This is about doing things that I want to do, and I just want other women like me to watch my program, to watch whatever I share online, to motivate them, to inspire them, so that they feel like, okay, because I have met lots of women my age who are saying, oh, Munwara, my kids are older now. Like, I feel like nobody needs me anymore. What do I do now? Start your life now, I say.
Can I just challenge that as well, because this is so close to home for me. So obviously my son just came, but this is something that I used to get asked all the time. So I home educated exactly the same time as I went self-employed. There's no limitations for us now as women. We can do both. Yes, you need to be resourceful. Yes, you need to speak up and ask for support. Or yes, you just need to be willing to break the norms. And like, I literally used to take him to venues with me when he was like 7, put him in the corner. And then sometimes people, because I was a bit scared, like, just stay there. And, he's doing the same room and everything. But then actually, like, what you think is your limitation can end up being your strength. I remember many of the times, like, he'd come to Alpha boot camps and stuff with me. And he was, like, invited to come to the front. And then he'd be, like, gifted with, like, free books and stuff. And so, what you think is going to be, like, your detriment as a woman, especially as a parent, I love the fact that I didn't plan to, really crush that illusion, but it was just the way it happened, It was like I was inspired, like you, to do something new. And at the same time, I was seeing some issues with the teachers at school, and it was like, got to make a decision, what's in the highest good, made the decision. And the fact is, it doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter if you've got kids. I would say probably if I had more than one, it would have been a bit more of a struggle and a challenge. But we're so resourceful and creative, us human beings. And the universe really favors us to just go for what excites us most. We can feel alive because we're human. We're meant to feel alive. And then see the miracles that unfold, right? The fact that, oh God, really? Like, you can work and have a child and actually be super, amazing for both of you? Oh, shit. I love just breaking perceptions that we have in our cultures and in our, parenting, conditioning. It's just, we're so ready for change. We're so ready to...
You sound like you've been ready for change for a long time, Fontana, but you obviously didn't share it out openly, because sometimes we feel like the battle is our own personal battle. We cannot imagine how we can possibly, our stories can inspire others. This is why, just like the stories, every conversation I have on my YouTube channel is always teaching me something else. It's always leaving me inspired. And I hope that is also inspiring the audience, because like you talk about, like, doing things that we only realized during the pandemic. Many people, leadership roles and employers, only realized, okay, if you want an engaged workforce, what you need to do is offer flexibility. I was always advocating flexibility in every environment where I was in a responsible role. So it's nothing new for me. But then you, in the same way, homeschooling your son and taking him to these things, now we've become a lot more giving and a lot more like open, and we're embracing difference and creativity. Whenever I work with someone and a particular approach doesn't work or a particular system doesn't work, I always feel that individual probably has a creative solution. That's just the way I feel. And that is probably the element of creativity in me, because I'm a planner, I'm an organizer. I like to plan and organize, and structure is important because I can get so much done. That's the way I get so much done. But there's an element inside me that's like an innate thing around the curiosity element. And I don't know if it's because of the religious influence or that I have that belief that you can plan, but you have to be open to things not going according to your plan, and you have to be open to something will not work out, and that is going to be our lesson, and we're going to learn from that lesson moving forward. You have to also be open that we don't know everything, right? Because what we know today, tomorrow is going to be history, right? So we don't know what else is there. And like my daughter says, she says, only X% of the ocean has been discovered, Mum. Just imagine how much has yet to be discovered.
Wow. Yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, just before I forget, like before my son came in, when you were talking about the message I wanted to share, because I know in your culture especially, so many like of those restrictions because of your gender, the expectations, and even like wider than culture as well, is this just this experience we have that we then pass on, where we say to our children, and was said to us, that you don't listen to me. Why don't you listen? You never listen at school. You've got to listen or you're going to get punished, right? You're going to get detention. So this is like a huge structure that I'm really passionate about sort of influencing, because the fact is we really, really, really know deep down that the only person that we really need to listen to is ourselves. That's literally why I can feel my whole heart opening as I say that. That's literally why we don't listen. We don't listen. As we become older, we learn that, when we listen to different perspectives, we expand our understandings, appreciation, etc., etc. But as children, the fundamental reason why we don't listen, because we know on a real cellular level that our own wisdom, the only things we're ever going to need to know, hear, and live by are inside us. And our parents can really, delay our progress and our self-trust with that narrative of, you got to listen to me. The way that I've evolved as a parent over the years, because of needs consciousness, is to really try and have a dialogue where I'm always kind of asking, okay, this is what I would like you to do, but do you find any value in this? Is there a benefit here for you? Is there a need met here? You pass it through your own system first, Otherwise, I'll be resourceful and find a different strategy, a different person, or whatever, right? But that's just like, it's released the mum guilt, right? Because we repeat how we were parented, and it's expanded my relationship with my son as a human being, and not as a dynamic that is temporary anyway, in that sense of identity, right? God knows I know that because I just lost my mum. So, you know, it's like, yeah, that was just really wanted to come through there about, you know, the fact that from when we're just bloody knee high, we're shamed for not listening, when the evolution is to go back in, and the billion-dollar business now, which is self-help, is about guiding people back within. So it speaks for itself.
It's so interesting. So interesting around the whole listening thing. Listening is so hard. It's so hard as a skill.
Yeah.
And you're so right when you say, because many of us don't even listen to our own calling.
Yeah.
When we're not listening to ourselves, how can we listen to other people? And most of us feel the need for someone to listen to us. And we go to places, counseling, and counseling doesn't always solve the problem. You want someone to just listen to you non-judgmentally, almost like a counselor, but you don't want it to be invalidated. You want them to listen, but you don't want them to invalidate you. But then everyone's too busy wanting someone else to listen to them. They haven't got time to listen to you. It just feels, it's mind-boggling. But yeah, you're right. When I think internally, and I think about my own childhood, and I think about where I've got to now, I had to listen to myself because I didn't have anyone else to listen to me. You know, in a lot of situations, I found myself cornered in very, very uncomfortable situations. You know, one of them being when I was doing some legal work experience internship in South Carolina, and we were interviewing this guy who'd been like had a string of sexual offenses, and the lawyer didn't tell us before that we're going to be interviewing this man. And when we saw him, he was 6 foot tall and two young students. And I remember at the time, it was like my gut told me, and I'm sure her gut was telling her the same thing. Between the two of us, we planned a strategy where we're going to sit, what move we will take if any of us are at risk or at danger. You know, we put all these risks, we did a risk assessment. We put all these different mechanisms in place to safeguard ourselves. But we didn't have a manager or supervisor to tell us. You know, if what you say, if we follow that, approach where we need to tap into our own self-belief, we need to tap into our own confidence that's inside us, the courage inside us, the bravery inside us, and the voice that's like you need to listen to your own voice. If we did all of that, then as leaders, would it matter so much if you didn't have a supervisor who was regimentally supervising you?
This is the future of business for sure. When you know for sure that the people on your team are self-led and have confidence, like you said, that they are advocating for the best needs of all, that they are aware, self-aware, not denying, not all the rest of it. That is the future.
And I hope, I so agree with you. I just hope businesses are going to pick up on this, because it feels like that's how it is in the entrepreneurial world, but not so much in the business world. And I have found in my own journey, leadership journey, that the more higher up you go, the more human you need to become.
100%.
Or not become, but at least tap into your humanness, because that those are the ones that are successful right at the top. I've spoken to, I've heard, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and many of them, the more successful they are, the more down to earth they are, and then less of a mask. It's a game. It feels like it's a game. You've got to wear those masks to get to the top, and once you get to the top, the mask is gone.
And it's for security. It's a need for security. Now I'm just thinking of teachers that I know and that I've coached in the past, and the fact is, like, they've got to the point where they're reaching out. Everyone needs support, no matter where you're at. They're reaching out for some sort of mentorship or, you know, guidance. They're reaching out. They're looking out. They're looking externally, which is what we do automatically. And they can watch hundreds of podcasts, listen to hundreds of podcasts or YouTube videos, and maybe remember one thing. And that one thing that they're remembering is going to be that thing that is already in them that they needed to hear from themselves, right? So it's already in them. It's already something they knew. And that's why they're like, oh, yeah, they resonate with it because it's in them. But my point to share that is the fact, like, I feel so much deep, like, compassion for teachers because they're in a dynamic where really and truly they are being called to recognize 30 little beings' needs and it's fucking impossible for one person to do. So it's no wonder why they're struggling, right? And looking outside for another strategy or just something that can liberate them from the stress. So I say, especially after the most recent space that I've worked in, that I've always said it, but I know it in every part of my being to be true now, that those of us who are in care work, who are in those frontline services, like you said, are really the ones that need to be caring for ourselves the most, that need to be aware of our needs the most. Because otherwise the pattern that has become for us in our sector is you serve others, you get burnt out, you get sick, you take time off. You come back, you have to catch up on the work, you get burnt out because we haven't all got management styles where we know how to use non-violent communication and we can delegate in a way where people don't feel like you're taking advantage and compromising their needs, their comfortability with, you know, what they feel like they can do, or not even that, more what they enjoy doing, right? Because we want people to enjoy themselves, their work. We don't want to have workforces where people hate their job. And the fact is, I was looking at the other day, I wrote an article and I was doing a tiny bit of research and it was saying like 73% of us in the workplace are literally burnt out. 73%.
That's really high. So what do you think is the solution, especially in our sector? Because as you highlight, it's very common in our sector. We are hardworking. We work with some of the most vulnerable of groups, people with the most highest mental health needs, and, you know, the care profession. What can employers do to change this? And what do people even know they can change it?
That's the first bit. You have to believe that there's a possibility to create change. And, you know, I'm sure you know, like, it comes the identity. It's the identity you have. If you don't have an identity that believes in possibility and evolution, you shouldn't be in that position because you're not going to thrive. You're not going to thrive if you don't believe that there's a possibility for change. It's absurd. You're just suffering. and you're suffering filters down. That's not leadership. So it's like, okay, my own experience, I hate advice, my own experience is what I know resonates, because I'm a coach, like I've coached leaders as well, is you have to prioritize yourself, your humanness first, and really start going back in and connecting. And it's the stuff that we just want to keep avoiding, you know, but you're going to hear it again, especially if it's for you. You better believe it's going to come into your reality again and again, this invitation. Because it's the only way. Like, the universe wants us to evolve. It's going to keep bringing things to make us choose something new. And the choice for leaders is to recognize you're human first. You're not your role and your workload first. You're not your targets. You're not your deadlines. They will literally kill you. Being extreme. But the fact is, again, if you do the research on the stats, people are just leaving, or people are literally getting really, really sick because this whole cycle of not being willing to just come back to self. So it's time. To answer your question in a shorter sentence is take time out. Like, I know you just said before we came on, you only work 4 days. Like, we need to prioritize our time in a way where we are filling ourselves up. So when we go to work, we're overflowing. If we're not going to work overflowing, don't go to work, because you're going to bring everyone else down. Right?
Yeah, it's so common in the small charity sector, where we know our staff work really hard. We know they in the profession we're in, we need support, yet our budget doesn't reflect it. So I know that in positions I've held of responsibility, I have encouraged boards to say, we need to invest in well-being, right? And staff well-being, because at the end of the day, who are staff, who are employees, they're just an extension of the community, right? And everyone is connected, and it impacts an impact on one person. It has an impact on the rest of society. So, but like, the thing is, I believe beyond the pandemic, small charities are making those changes. I know of one organization that was recently won a Charity Times Award. And I know that when I went to one of their talks, they talked about, like, I think allocating £20,000 towards staff welfare. To myself, ooh, they need to be out, like they should be singing from, like on treetops, so that other small charities like in Waltham Forest, for example, can hear that, and funders can hear that, and funders can say, oh, well, no wonder this organization is doing so well and they're getting awards, is because they're investing in the well-being of their staff. So therefore, the next organization that comes to us for funding, why don't we offer them some money towards their staff well-being? Because it's new, isn't it? When something is new,
you need to catch on.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time, but those people who are ahead, they're ahead on the leadership journey.
And this responsibility to, like you said, make sure you're being visible, so we can all show that, it does actually make a difference to invest in staff well-being. But before that, because obviously, as we know, it takes time for these things to clock on everywhere. But I am excited that, like you said, there is a lot of changes in terms of well-being in these spaces where they matter most, like meditation in schools, and it just matters so much.
And I think we will get there, Fontana.
Yeah. But before we can do that in the workplace, I just have to say, like, self-responsibility first. Self-responsibility, when you're not at work, how are you spending your time? Are you numbing out? Are you trying to escape? Are you dreading Monday? Or are you going to switch off your tech? It is like a typical, I hate gurus, but it's a typical guru thing to say. But I'm literally saying it from the space of somebody who lived doing those things, because I guess so that I could share that I'm relatable, I guess. And then have come back to realizing, oh no, do I want to be consumerism? Do I want to be the norm? Or do I want to be like every other human being with human needs, but just choose something that's, like you said, just a slightly bit different, so that we can have a massive different experience of life?
Yeah.
That's the one.
So on that note, I'm going to end to say that Fontana will be her unique self, just like I try to be my unique self. We don't know what we don't know yet.
I don't know what I've just spoken about.
It's okay, Fontana. It's fine. Everything you've spoken about has been enlightening, refreshing, and I'm sure the both of us will inspire many other people that work in the community leadership world. Our challenges are similar.
Yeah.
And like you said, our human needs are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And anything I do in my position of responsibility, the whole point I'm trying to make is you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just need to care enough about people.
Yourself.
Yeah, and yourself. You've got to care. I do care about myself.
It's such a thing. Like, I hate it, but I know because I've done it. Like, so everyone else, like, you have to care about the community.
I know.
But
Fontana, it's an old habit, and it's taken me a long time. And but I do care about myself. In the process, I learned that I did care about myself because I always saved myself. However, there's a recognition that we're all very different and our personalities are different. And you've got the Myers-Briggs, you've got you can do your own strength analysis, SWOT, to see things. Some of us are introverted, some of us are extroverted. There is the natural trait as an extrovert. I naturally think of others before me. So that's my default position. So I do my best to remind myself not to be in that position, because I often remind myself I need to put the oxygen mask on, because I'm no good to anybody if I'm not alive, right? So I do remind myself, because it's very, very hard. Doesn't matter how much self-help you seek, ultimately there is a default position that we all naturally sort of revert back to. But anyway, I don't want to keep on like go on forever, but we are both creatives and most people will forgive us for that. I've enjoyed this conversation with you. It's been on another level. I think we came in to talk about inclusion and community leadership, but what most people, I hope, will learn is that we're human.
It's a good message.
We're human. And if that's the only message you take away, we would love to hear from you. Please do give us some feedback. And Fontana, you can connect with Fontana via her LinkedIn handle. You'll find her under Fontana Kennedy on LinkedIn. And you can watch this on replay on YouTube and on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, Fontana, for being my guest today.
Thank you. Bye.